Good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Crew. I'm the Department Chair of Science and Math, and I would like to welcome everyone to the open forum, where you will have the opportunity to hear directly from today's CEO candidate, Dr. Kenneth Gonzalez. The format and ground rules for the forum are: I will introduce the candidate. The candidate will then give a brief 10 or 15-minute introduction and biography of his qualifications for your consideration as Capital Community College's next CEO. I will then start the meeting with 2 questions that I have chosen, which should further help inform us of the candidate's ability to effectively lead Capital Community College. Next, you, the attendees, will be able to send through the chat feature of WebEx any questions you would like the candidate to address. I will moderate the chat room and select questions to ask the candidate for the remainder of the session. We'll conclude the forum at the scheduled time, approximately 1 p.m. Before I begin, I ask all of you to make sure your phone or computer is on mute during the entire session. If there is too much noise from unmuted devices, I will interrupt the forum and we will force mute all the devices. I will now introduce the candidate and provide a brief bio. Dr. Kenneth P. Gonzalez has served as a tenured faculty member, associate dean, associate vice president in academic affairs, vice president for student and enrollment services, and national pathways coach. The hallmark of his work centers on equity and access for first-generation, low-income, and students of color. Dr. Gonzalez's scholarship examines the experiences of underrepresented and low-income students in higher education and appears in the Journal of College Student Development, the International Journal of Qualitative Research in Education, the Journal of College Student Retention, Urban Education, New Directions for Higher Education, and the Journal of Hispanic Higher Education. He served on editorial boards for the Journal of College Student Development, the Journal of Hispanic Higher Education, and the Journal of the First Year Experience and Students in Transition. Dr. Gonzalez is a national expert on institutional effectiveness in higher education. He conducts training on collecting and using data to design effective student success interventions, as well as strategic planning, accreditation, program review, faculty leadership development, and learning outcome assessment. Kenneth P. Gonzalez earned a BS in psychology and Masters of Social Work at Brigham Young University, as well as a PhD in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at Arizona State University. I now present to you Dr. Kenneth Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, students. This is Kenneth Gonzalez. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction. A little bit of additional background. So I grew up in a blue-collar town called Fontana, California. It was a steel town, and most of us, when we graduated from high school, we were all expected to go work in a steel mill. My grandfather worked there, my uncles worked there. But when my junior year arrived, the steel mill shut down. And for those of you who study social economics, you know that when an industry that primarily employed residents of a particular area, when it shuts down, it really makes it difficult for the community to kind of move on and to have jobs that provide a living wage. So fortunately, I was able to go to college, and like me, weren't too many people that came from a similar blue-collar background. And I knew that there were students, there were people from my community that belonged in college. So since then, I have this desire to do all that I could to help more students of color, first generation, low income students get into college, successfully complete college, and to kind of move on from there. So I've done that. I did that as a student. I did that after I received my master's in social work. And then after I finished my PhD in educational leadership and policy studies, I continued that as a role of a faculty member and then now an administrator. So that's been a constant for me in my work. Um, and I look forward to hearing your questions, responding, and to letting you know that I'm here um, to engage you in a discussion about the future of the college and what I might be able to do to contribute. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez, for your introduction. I'm going to start us off with the first couple of questions. The first question is, what two qualities of a leader do you believe are most important in effectively leading Capital Community College?
Um, I mentioned this earlier in a previous session, but I think it's important to speak to the students about these qualities. And the two qualities are integrity and empathy. Um, I want the students to know that there's somebody that has a high level of integrity that they can rely on, that will have consistency in their approach to advocating and supporting the college, that there's a level of transparency and a level of trustworthiness in terms of what they say and following up on any discussions and promises. So integrity is very important for me and my leadership approach. In addition to that, I mentioned earlier that when I was younger, I made a commitment to get a degree in social work, which was really solidified. It solidified my vision of my life and my values, which is really about service. It's really about serving holistically, and it's really about empathy and developing an empathetic understanding. So I feel like it's my responsibility to hear from students, from staff, from faculty, in a way where I ground it in a sense of empathy, where my job is to put myself in the shoes of students, to put myself in the shoes of staff, in the shoes of faculty. And then with that understanding, I can provide better service. So the two qualities would be integrity and empathy.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. The second question I have for you, given the current pandemic due to the COVID virus that we are all living in, issues of equity for our students have been amplified with the transition to fully online classes. How do you define equity? And secondly, what are some strategies you would implement to mitigate the equity issues our students are currently facing and most likely will continue to face in the future?
Okay. Um, Equity is a topic that is discussed more and more. But I think since my days as a student, I've been addressing issues of equity, and that for me that really means that there are two individuals who appear to be equal, but yet one of them has significantly more obstacles to overcome than another. And we want to close those gaps. We want them to have the same resources regardless of their background. And so when we talk about these resources, we can think of resources in terms of access to healthcare. Do both individuals might be students, but someone can easily get access to healthcare and another one doesn't have access to healthcare, doesn't have the resources to be seen by doctors or to pay for the costs of medical care. They don't have, there might be differences in terms of having resources for food, for transportation, for housing. Um, so all of those are really important if we are to truly support our students. Um, so my approach to this is to again understand and be able to put myself in the shoes of students, to be able to hear their voices enough that I understand where they're coming from and understanding their needs holistically, that the college can support them not only in the classroom, not only outside of the classroom, but in their whole lives from a holistic perspective. That if there are challenges related to transportation, healthcare, food, housing, all of that, that the college finds ways to support the whole student, and that would be my commitment.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. Um, Next question from one of our audience members. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with student government?
Okay. We have a really great team here in El Paso, and our student government leaders are very active, very committed, advocacy minded. And there have been a couple of ways that I've worked with them closely. One of them has to do with shared governance, and understanding decision making, and understanding the role of the student in the governance of the college. So when I first arrived, I would notice that the student government leaders would present at our board meetings. And the dynamic was one where the students would present, the board members would say, thank you very much, and then it was over. And it was this dynamic of just reporting out and getting a thank you from the board, and there wasn't any follow up. Um, so I met with the student leaders and we talked about governance, we talked about decision making, we talked about leadership, and we talked about the budget. And I said, okay, and I studied higher education institutions for my doctorate program, so I can nerd out on all of this. So I said, okay, so who is the president? And you're able to name the president. Okay, what power does the president have to make decisions? And then who is the boss of the president? So we talked about the board of trustees has the power to hire and fire the president. I'm like, okay, so who selects the board? Well, they're elected officials. Okay, so what is the role of funding? So we had all of these conversations about governance and funding, and then I said, okay, well, why don't we invite 2 or 3 board members to your annual summer retreat, and we'll hear it from them. What do they think? What does shared governance mean for them? And what is the role of students in the decision-making process? What kind of influence do students have in terms of the cost of tuition and fees? Um, and that was very powerful for them. I think it gave them a sense of agency where they felt that they could have more influence, and they knew the process to influence the future direction of the college. So, and that kind of speaks also to my leadership style of wanting to be straight with students and with whoever I engage with, so they know where I'm coming from, and that I want them to understand the dynamics of the college and to be able to contribute to the college. So that's my commitment moving forward.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. Next question. What is your definition of student success, and what new leadership initiatives will you pursue to help students be more successful according to your definition of success?
Okay. So I mentioned this earlier. I talked about success in a couple of ways. One, to be on the pathway for success, especially when you're a student, is to really have a high level of confidence that what you're studying is really what you want to study, is what you want to be, is your life's purpose. And so at my current institution, we spend a lot of time and commitment to work with students to increase their level of confidence in their selected program of study. And we feel like students have a high degree of confidence. Lots of potential positive outcomes happen. They know that this is what I really want to do. This is why I need to study and take these classes and be successful in these classes, because I'm on a pathway of something that is my life's purpose. So that's kind of one. The second one is Um, the system of higher education is one in which the only way to graduate is to complete courses, right? You just have to pass a number of courses, and after you pass X number of courses, then you've earned your degree. So the question is, how do we successfully pass all these classes? And some classes are easier to pass than others. So you have your handful of classes that are a struggle, that they're a challenge for the majority of students, and we can look at the data and find that out. So the question is, what are those classes that are particularly challenging? And then how can the college provide support to help students pass those classes? So we have a number of those classes. I'll talk about a couple of them. We have History 1301. And History 1301 probably has a pass rate of about 60%. So 40% of students don't even pass this class. And we don't like that number. We need to reduce that number. So we went to the students and we asked them, what are the challenges you're having in passing this history course? And what they said was over and over again, we did more than one focus group. We got a strong pattern. And what they said was that we don't know what the faculty want when they have an essay question. I don't know if I'm supposed to list out bullets. I don't know if I'm supposed to list a bunch of dates. I don't know if they want me to write in MLA format or APA format. I just need to know, what does an A response look like for an essay question? And so we took that back to the faculty, and they're like, we can absolutely explain that in class. We'll take some time in class, we'll do a sample essay question, we'll have people respond, we'll talk about the different responses, and then we'll give a model of an A response, a B response, a C response, and lower. So they put that in the syllabus, and next thing you know, students are now responding and getting better grades in the essay response. And that was unique to history because there were four tests in the history class, and every single test was a response to an essay question. So knowing how to respond to essay questions was really critical to pass that class. And then we had a team of tutors. And the tutors, instead of focusing specifically on historical um, figures and events, they focused on how to respond to an essay. And that's what they did to provide support. So we can absolutely do this, um, and, um, and it makes a difference.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. Let's see, next question. I believe you work with Achieving the Dream, and Capital Community College has been a leader college in Achieving the Dream for the past 7 or 8 years. Can you share an experience where you made a data-driven decision that had a measurable impact on your students' success, which is consistent with achieving the dream?
Mhm. Great. So, about 8 years ago, as we started Achieving the Dream about 15 years ago, 8 or 10, maybe 10 years ago, as we were developing tools to do this work, I was asked to write an article on exactly this. How do you use data to increase student success? In fact, that's the title, Using Data to Increase Student Success, a Focus on Diagnosis. And really, there are kind of four components to do this work. Number one, you need to look at the what data, so which really is your outcome data, which students are successful, have good GPAs, passing their classes, or persisting or graduating, are making progress toward their degrees. So that's kind of the what. But the next thing we need to do is ask and answer the why question. For those students who are struggling, why? What are their primary challenges and obstacles? So that's a whole nother moment of data collection where we do focus groups and interviews with students to understand what are the unique experiences of veteran students, of single parents, and what obstacles do they have to overcome. So we really got at the why. Then the third component is really the intervention. Okay, now that we know the why, let's put an intervention that addresses the why, those why factors of why students are struggling. And then the fourth component is the data assessment evaluation. And that's really asking the question, how effective did our intervention, did the resources we put together have an impact on student success? And then we just keep rotating that four-step process. So I've done that in several colleges all over the country and trained colleges on how to use this four-step process, which is the why, the intervention, and then the evaluation. And the best example I gave earlier was looking at our students who finished their first term on academic probation, which was something like 38%. We were able to reduce that to 16% by number one, looking at the outcome data, and we found out that we had way too many students on academic probation after their first term. Then we asked why. We found out why. Then we developed an intervention for it. And that intervention was able to reduce um, the percent of students who had below 2.0 from 38% having below 2.0 to 16, 17% having below 2.0, which is still too high, but much lower than where we were before. So it can be done, but it's using more than one type of data collection effort and to really hearing and listening to our students about what their experiences are.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. The next question will piggyback on the one you just responded to. Capital Community College is an urban campus, and the majority of students who enter our college for the first time are placed into developmental education classes, typically English and math. Typically, most of those students face barriers which are non-academic. What do you feel are the most typical non-academic barriers that our students face? And what would be the types of interventions that you would support for our students to overcome those barriers and increase our success rates of developmental education students?
Mm-hmm. Great question. There's a lot of work that's been going on to help students in developmental education, support classes, acceleration to college level classes, um, uh, rethinking the assessment test, what right assessment test, whether we should use high school GPA and the last grade that they received in a math class or an English class in high school to really make sure that we're placing them in the right classes. And then historically, when we started Achieving a Dream 15 years ago, there were some often, right, more times than not, there was a college level course and then one, two, three, four courses below the college level course that students were often placed into. And many of them were placed into the lowest level or the second to the lowest level math or English class. And so over the years, there's been lots of debate and discussion of whether that's the best way um, to do it. And if those students who start in these lower levels, what's the likelihood that they would ever make it to the college level class and then pass that college level class? So, so states are and colleges are looking at that, looking at different ways to place students, um, and um, and so there are different states are doing different things. In California, they're completely eliminated testing and they're using high school GPA, math, and English to place students in there. And they're still collecting the data to see if that makes sense. I think the promising practices that are out there that are related to this are those where um, if a student is not quite college ready, that they have a support class that is really helping them get ready and pass the college level math class. And I think it's the difference between thinking of the developmental as courses as opposed to support tools to help students pass a college level math class. So the end result is we want students to pass a college level math. What tools what supports can we put in place for them to be able to do that? Um, So, but getting to the non-academic barriers, that's where we're starting to look at the whole student. And so I'll give you an example. If you have a student, we have students that are working full time, going to school full time, are in developmental education, and the support that we have for them is outside of class, the tutoring, the supplemental instruction, and they're having to go to work. They're not able to participate in those activities. I think this COVID-19 situation that we're in is really creating new ways of thinking about supporting students, that we can do online tutoring, that we can do supplemental instruction that occurs virtually, that occurs in late night hours, so that not everything needs to be in the afternoon or end at 6 p.m., that we could have tutoring that's happening at 10 p.m. at night, at midnight, at 1 o'clock in the morning, when some of our younger people are still up and doing their work. So, um, but let me end with what I said in the previous session was whatever we decide, it needs to be based on the student experience, on their voices, and it needs to be a group of individuals, a community that's going to come up with these solutions, and not just one or two people.
Great. Thank you for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. Um, I'm a student at Capital Community College, and I hear these words, this phrase, guided pathways, thrown around. I have no idea what guided pathways mean. Could you explain that to me?
Good. Yes. Um, I think for us, it means different things to different people all over the country. I think it needs to mean one clear thing at each college, and the college decides what that means and communicate that in a very clear way. So at El Paso Community College, that means a couple of things. One, guided pathways is when a student reaches a high level of confidence of what they want to do, their purpose in life, that there is a program or what we call a guided pathway that helps students understand for you to achieve your life's purpose. This is the pathway. These are the classes that you need to take, the specific classes you need to take in the first semester, the classes you need to take in your second semester, that will tell you right now that if you take X number of classes in your first semester, you will be done with this program, ready to launch into your life's purpose in 2 years, or 2.5 years, or 3 years. So they know that if they go full time, they'll be able to complete this pathway um, in a shorter time frame than if they're part time. And so for students, it's being more explicit about what courses are available, complete their program, and how long it's going to take. And so and our next level that we've been working on of our pathway is not simply through the associate degree or a workforce program, but it might be through the bachelor's program. We talk about pathways now that might even go through the master's program or to law school or to med school or to a PhD program, that this is the beginning of their pathway. So right now we've launched some initiatives where we have pathways articulated through the bachelor's with our partner universities. So you can see if you're a student at our college, you'll get a document that has a pathway through the bachelor's at our partner universities. So it's really about clarity for us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. At Capital Community College, we have a very large Latino population, and in fact, Hartford County has one of the most dense Latino populations in all of the country. What specific messaging Latino population at Capital Community College?
Mhm. Great question. So what we're doing a few things. One, we start really early. We start in elementary schools. We adopt elementary schools. We have adoption ceremonies where they're now a college-bound school, and students get T-shirts. All the students, we have a big assembly. It's very exciting, and they start seeing themselves as future college students. And then our students will go to the elementary schools throughout the year, engage in activities. So the whole idea of just uh, uh, creating that mindset that yes, I'm going to be going to college. I might be in first grade or fifth grade, but I'm going to college, and Capital Community College is where I'm going to go. So that's made a big difference. And some of these schools are predominantly Latino. So you have your certain some elementary schools are 90% Latino. Some elementary schools are 30% Latino. So we're hitting those high percentage schools where there's larger percentages of Latino students. And we do that at elementary school, middle school, high school. But the other thing that we're doing is we're reaching out to the families and creating family events on campus that represent and recognize the Latino culture, the heritage, the sense of community. So we have lots of events, and when you start seeing parents and families show up on campus where they feel like they're comfortable here, they're welcomed here, it makes a huge difference. You see the kids running around the campus, and that families are showing up. That makes a big difference. So that would be something that would be important to me, to create that sense of community and that early outreach.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Gonzalez. To sort of piggyback on the last question, we are a Hispanic serving institution at Capital Community College, and we are currently applying for a Title V grant for Hispanically serving institutions. Can you share a little bit about your experience raising funds for urban campuses? As you know, the dollars we get from the state don't meet the needs of the college, so securing funding is critical. Can you share some of your experiences in being successful at doing that at the other institutions you've worked at?
Mhm. Absolutely. One of the benefits of being part of Achieving a Dream is at the national level is having access to lots of foundations. So I've developed strong relationships with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Lumina Foundation, Jobs for the Future, the Kresge Foundation, and have a good sense of where they're going, where their priorities are. And for these foundations, what they're really looking for, they're looking for places that can be a model for other institutions. And so, where we've been successful in receiving grants is is presenting it in that way. That this is our plan of what we're going to do to better serve students, especially Latino students or underrepresented students or veteran students. And this is our reputation in the past of developing similar programs, of being models for other institutions, and success begets success. So once you're able to be that model with support from one of these foundations, they're going to support you again to be a model in a different way. So we're always looking at not necessarily doing something innovative, but doing something that's effective that can serve a model for other institutions. Often it's innovative, but not innovation just for the sake of innovation. Innovation that actually leads to outcomes that we're trying to achieve on a large scale. I think the foundations that are looking to support colleges want to see initiatives at a large scale and not just for a handful of students. And we've been doing that, and now we have significant funding from many resources, from many foundations to do the work that we do with our students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez, for that response. Um, if you are chosen as the next CEO of Capital Community College, I understand you to be relocating from a different region of the country. Um, what do you feel would be the most important strategies to get engaged in the Hartford community as quickly as possible, to feel like you're one of the nutmeggers here in Connecticut?
Mhm. I love community. I value so much a sense of community and being part of community, being part of activities. And I mentioned this earlier. Um, the college, we want the college to be successful. And for the college to be successful, it needs to have several partnerships. It needs to be aligned with what's happening in the city, what's happening in the county, what's happening in the state, what's happening with large nonprofit organizations, what's happening in the Latino community, the African American community, Asian American community, the LGBT community. We need to forge those partnerships, strengthen those partnerships, and that's something that I enjoy more than almost anything else is building relationships with people and with organizations. So I would be involved. It would be my life to be part of the community, I always want to be as close to the college as possible. So I will look to live as close to the college as possible. If I could walk to the college, that would be ideal. And so I've always enjoyed that kind of living existence, to be close and to be engaged.
Thanks again, Dr. Gonzalez, for your response. Um, One of the non-academic barriers that unfortunately many of our students deal with on a daily basis is the struggle with food insecurity. What experience do you have with helping alleviate that barrier? And if you could speak to how you might address that in Hartford, Connecticut, at Capital Community College.
Okay. Yes, we've made several commitments and are implementing several initiatives around food insecurity, transportation, housing, and healthcare in El Paso. El Paso is a big geographic area, and we have 5 campuses. So we have uh, uh, support for students who are food insecure with through pantries, but also we've partnered with um, our local nonprofits to provide food trucks that will go from each of our regions on certain days that will provide fresh produce and meats in addition to canned and dry goods for our students. So that's been up and running for 2.5, 3 years now, and it's been very successful. Um, so um, and it's all part of our kind of comprehensive support for students, and not just with food but also with transportation, working with our local bus authority to make sure that our buses match the times that students need to be in our campuses or leave our campuses. Our housing, we've worked with the housing authority in the area, where students are able to get reductions in rent if they're currently enrolled as a student. So we're also working, and then finally we're working on healthcare initiatives to provide healthcare for our students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez, for your response. Next question. I have a couple more before we wrap up our session today. At Capital Community College, as well as the other community colleges in Connecticut, we have many more part-time instructors than full-time instructors. And often students feel like they might be getting shortchanged um, because part-time instructors don't have the same level of responsibility as full-time instructors. How would you help the college faculty to better serve our students, both full-time and part-time, so that there's students feel like there's a more equal playing field with regards to it doesn't really matter whether I have a part-time instructor or a full-time instructor. I'm still gonna get the benefit of the learning that I need.
Absolutely. And I had mentioned this in a previous session that there's a national conversation right now about how we can better support our part-time faculty. And we need to support them in terms of not only compensation, but also healthcare, consistent access to healthcare. So our part-timers sometimes will have healthcare for a few months and then their hours change or their academic load changes, and all of a sudden they don't qualify for the same level of healthcare as before. So it's also inconsistent. Um, but there are conversations, we're having conversations here about creating consistency in terms of healthcare for our part-timers, creating a physical space for our part-timers to meet with students. I think also this, what we're dealing with in COVID-19 is it's forcing all of us to figure out how to meet with students virtually as opposed to physically. I think we still need to provide physical resources in terms of meeting spaces for our part-timers, that they have access to computers, to the internet, to printers, to the tools they need to be effective. But I think now, I think there are people are experimenting with more tools to support students virtually. So I think that's really important. I don't think our students should see, they shouldn't see a big difference between our full-time and our part-time faculty. They should, we want them to just experience a great learning interaction with our faculty, regardless of their part-time or full-time status. But we as a college need to be able to respect our part-time faculty by providing the support that they need, so that they feel they don't have to worry about these other outside pressures, and they can focus on creating a great learning environment for their students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. So that leads me to the penultimate question. So we have two to go. Um, Hypothetical. I'm a student at the college, and you've become the new CEO of Capital Community College. We've gone through one semester together, so it's December 2020, and another student comes up to me and asks me, "Tell me two qualities of your new CEO that impresses me the most." What would you want my response to be as a student?
Um, I would hope that it would be he's someone that cares. He's someone that really cares about students. He's someone that really wants to listen to the perspective of students, and that he keeps to his word. So, kind of going back to integrity and empathy, he keeps his word. He hears us, and he cares.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. So that leads us to the last question, which will frame your final remarks for consideration as our next CEO, keeping in mind that this is geared toward the student population. If I am a student at Capital Community College with a voice in the CEO selection process, why should I choose you as the next leader of Capital Community College?
Okay. Um, I don't know the other candidate, so I'll just speak to what I have to offer. What I can commit to is commit to a process where your voices will be heard, that I will be able to communicate what I'm hearing from students, what your concerns are, what your perspectives are, what your ideas are, and I can communicate that back to you to a point where you can say, okay, we've been heard, he understands. I'll also be able to commit to you that I'll take action to address the concerns, to follow up with the ideas, and to work with you in partnership on really leading the college forward as a collective, as a community. It really needs to be community driven. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier in another session, that uh, I think there's a question right now of how much is the system driving the future and the present of the college, and how much can the college drive its current condition and its future. And I will also commit to you to help the college drive its future, where it's driven by the community of the college, supported by the system, but that the college has the agency to make its own history, to make its own future.
I think you're muted, Mike.
Is that better? Thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. I want to thank you for your time and your candidness today. For all in attendance today, you will receive a follow-up email that has a video recording of this forum and an online survey for you to fill out. I ask that all of you take the time this week to fill out the survey. Thank you all for attending, and please stay safe.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Best of luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.